Every photo you see in this video was shot on the Sony A7IV. That's right, idiots. It's yet another white guy completely glazing up the Sony A7IV. I can almost guarantee you that this is not the first video about this camera that you've watched. And I can also almost guarantee you it's not going to be the last video about this camera that you've watched. But I'd love to play a small part in your Sony A7IV journey, whether you already have the camera now, you're looking at getting the camera, whatever the case may be. I'm going to squeeze myself into your life. So if you'll humor me for the next few minutes, I'd love to walk you through my complicated past and present with Sony cameras as a whole, and why, even though I'm invested into the Fujifilm and Nikon systems as well, I still use and love the Sony A7IV. What's up, my name is Walter. I'm a photographer and commercial filmmaker based in the southeastern United States. I have nothing else interesting to add after that part, so that's the intro. I first got into the Sony ecosystem in 2018, a few months after the release of the famous A7 III. I don't think it would be an overstatement to say that the A7 III was kind of like a shock to the system for mirrorless cameras everywhere. It kind of signaled to everybody that not only is Sony here to stay for this mirrorless revolution, but that there was a mirrorless revolution to begin with. And Sony was going to lead the charge with these mirrorless cameras until everyone else can kind of catch up. And I think some people, Nikon, Fujifilm, are still trying to catch up to Sony when it comes to the mirrorless camera game. So I got the A7 III in 2018, and that was my absolute workhorse for the next like 5 years for all of my photo and video work. Along the way, I also picked up a couple of like crop sensor Sony cameras as B cams or backups or whatever, but the A7 III was still my primary camera for like everything that I did. I racked up over, I think, almost 300,000 shutter actuations on my A7 III. It was beat to hell and back, but man, was it an incredible camera, and it really opened my eyes to what not only mirrorless cameras can do, but what Sony mirrorless cameras can do. Without going into further detail here, I did finally sell that A7 III in 2023 to kickstart my investment into the Fujifilm ecosystem, as my plan at the time was to go all in on photography and largely leave video production almost entirely behind. Turns out I didn't actually hate video production, and I was just really burned out and working unhappily at an agency job that I had at the time. And then when I was laid off from that job and had to decide what my next career move was going to be, I decided I didn't hate video production and I wanted to keep going in it, and I wanted my Sony cameras to kind of continue on with me in that journey. So it's a good thing I never ended up selling my Sony A7S III, which I picked up in 2021. I still have it right now. I'm filming on it as we speak, because the Sony A7 IV ended up being like the perfect B cam for all of my video work, as well as an amazing dedicated photography camera. So with all my personal crap out of the way, I would love to talk about why the Sony A7 IV is still an incredibly compelling camera in 2025, no matter what type of photo or video work you're doing. And before I keep going, I need to interrupt this video with this week's sponsor, which is myself. If you like my photos that you're seeing in this video, and specifically the colors you see in them, then I have good news for you. You can purchase my preset pack called Fujifilm through the link in the description. The Fujifilm preset pack includes Fujifilm Astia, Fujifilm Chrome, Fujifilm Superia and Superia Light, Fujifilm Acros, and Fujifilm Simple. All handcrafted presets that have been made by yours truly to bring your images from dull and flat to punchy and exciting. The whole preset pack is $20 on my website, but if you use code Fujifilm is good, which is also in the description, you can take a whole $5 off of that preset pack and get the whole thing for only $15. You can also get the Fujifilm Chrome preset on its own completely for free on my website as well. You just follow the link in the description and you can try it out before you buy the whole pack. You're more than welcome to do that. You're also more than welcome to only download Chrome for free and then go on about your merry way. Consider it my gift to you for watching this video. Okay, back to this video. To put it very simply, the Sony A7 IV just hits all the right notes. Starting with the boring stuff that's on paper, here's the kind of punch that this camera is packing. A very capable 33 megapixel sensor, which is a perfect balance for files that are both detailed but not too big. 10 frames per second raw photo shooting, 4K 10-bit 422 video recording, 2 SD card slots for peace of mind in professional work, and one of those card slots is CF Express Type A, and incredibly fast and accurate autofocus. This camera really can almost do it all, whether you're doing photography or videography photography, or both. I own several cameras that I can and do use for all kinds of photo and video situations, notably from Fujifilm, Nikon, and Sony. I love each of these cameras a lot for a lot of different reasons and different applications, but I can pretty confidently say that the A7IV is the most reliable tool for almost any job I throw at it. If I wasn't in the privileged position of being able to kind of pick and choose what kind of camera I want to use for whatever I'm shooting, I would have zero problem relying solely on the Sony A7IV for all of my work. I also think this is the first Sony camera they released where they really dialed in their color science. Now, I never really had a problem with the colors on the Sony A7 III, but the generational leap from the 3 to the 4 was pretty noticeable in the color department. Sony colors now, I think, are the most accurate and true to life compared to all the other options out there, and it gives you the most flexibility to manipulate those colors to your liking as much as you want. And what can I say about Sony's autofocus that hasn't already been said? I know Sony's newer releases like the A7R5, the A1II, the A9 III, whatever the hell else is out there, all of those cameras have probably even better and crazier autofocus capabilities, but at no point have I ever felt like shortchanged by the autofocus capabilities in the A7IV for either photo or video work. Even with old third-party lenses like these Sigma art lenses that I love so much, the autofocus is still better than I could ever need in a professional camera, and it always nails it whenever I'm shooting in photo or video mode. The whole camera is also just very well designed from top to bottom, from inside out, from the very comfortable ergonomics to the great number of customizable buttons, allowing you to really just make this camera whatever the hell it is you want it to do for you. And the video capabilities of this camera are incredibly robust, and you can absolutely use it for any number of professional video scenarios. It films in 4K 10-bit 422. It's got good but not great, more on that later, IBIS, all the S-Log options you could ever want for very flexible color grading in post, and all the extremely capable video autofocus that we've already touched on. And finally, the price is very agreeable for what you get here, because this camera runs new, which you can still buy new directly from Sony or any retailer if you want to, for $2,500 US, but you can regularly find this camera under $2,000 on the new and refurbished market, which is what I would probably encourage you to do. For example, and this is just me, I'm not gonna say this can happen to you, but I bought my Sony A7 IV for $1,600 used. That's crazy. This camera is absolutely worth the full $2,500 if you wanted to buy it used. But finding it for almost $1,000 less, that's almost unheard of, so don't take that to mean like you will absolutely get this camera for that much. But if you can find this camera for like $1,900, $1,800, maybe even like $1,750, as long as it's in good condition, that is a very, very good deal for what you're getting out of this camera. Now, all of these things I just laid out should be enough to convince almost anyone who's in the market for a new camera that you just cannot go wrong with the Sony A7 IV. Whether you're shooting wedding photography, portrait photography, event photography, commercial photography, sports photography, wedding videography, commercial videography, YouTube content, and whatever the hell else you could possibly need, I just can't imagine that you'd be unhappy with this camera. And when you buy any camera, you're also buying into the ecosystem behind that camera, which in Sony's case is a very good thing. Of course, there's all kinds of accessories available for it, from flashes to grips and cages and everything else. But for me, one of the huge value adds for getting the A7 IV, or any Sony camera for that matter, is the plethora of lens options that are available to you. Yes, Sony has their first-party lenses and the G Master lenses that are incredibly performant, stupid sharp, the autofocus like reads your mind, but they're also super expensive. And so for the more budget-minded videographers and photographers, there's a ton of third-party and more inexpensive lens options available to you. Now, I shoot photos and videos for a living, and I rely on my Sony cameras to help me make that living. And I have a pretty wide kit of Sony lenses available to me. But when I say Sony lenses, I mean just E-mount lenses, because only 2 of my lenses are Sony, like first-party Sony lenses, and the rest of them are Sigma and Tamron. I absolutely love the third-party lens options that are available to you on the Sony system, and I've never really felt tempted to get like a G Master lens or anything like that. I actually prefer these old Sigma art lenses. They're heavy, they're bulky, I mean, they get dirty on the outside. There are just an incredible number of options for less expensive and still very, very good lenses if you wanted to buy into the Sony ecosystem. Now, all of that is not really anything I feel like I can say for other mirrorless camera options. Canon's mount is still pretty closed off. Nikon is still working on getting third-party companies to invest into them, and Fujifilm is, well, Fujifilm. I'm just kidding. Actually, they are doing a pretty good job of convincing third-party companies to make lenses for Fuji, but that's a topic maybe for another video. Anyway, I don't think anyone can convince me that Sony mirrorless isn't the best option if your main concern is lens selection, especially on a camera as versatile as the A7IV. If you just listened to me say all of that just now and didn't know anything else about the camera, you might be asking yourself, what could possibly be bad about this thing? But there are a few things about the A7IV that to me are less than ideal, and for maybe some of you might even be a deal breaker. The first and most disappointing thing about the Sony A7IV is the slight crippling of the video capabilities, at least when it's compared to other more capable Sony cameras or other comparable cameras in its class in other systems like Canon or Nikon or Fuji. Firstly, it is notorious for overheating if you're filming for any kind of extended amount of time, which is something I have never experienced on my Sony A7S III. Maybe it's due to the fact that the A7IV has that slightly higher resolution 33 megapixels sensor, so it's like pushing out more data and that's causing more heat. I'm not sure. The active stabilization is also just not amazing, as I often see some distracting digital wobble when I'm filming handheld. Again, something that I don't experience on my A7S III. But the strongest negative for video on the A7IV is most definitely the fact that it crops into Super 35 mode when you're filming in 4K 60. This might not be a huge deal for some people. It's not a huge deal for me because when I do need 4K 60, I will just pick up my A7S III. But if you find yourself shooting a lot in 4K and 60 and you really need the full focal range of whatever lenses it is that you're using, this might be a deal breaker for you, unless you have some kind of workaround, like maybe using APS-C lenses just for your 4K 60 needs. Outside of the video compromises that this camera makes, I also find the EVF and back screen to be pretty bad. Next to my Nikon ZF and Fujifilm X-T5, the EVF and back screen on the A7IV look pretty bad, and it kind of feels like this was one of the corners that Sony cut to make this camera so affordable, so I guess there's some give and take there. Who knows? And the final negative here is much more of a personal one just for me, and so I don't expect everybody to feel the same here, and that's okay. But that is that the Sony A7IV is just kind of boring to me. I feel this way for a variety of reasons, and the main one is probably just that I've been using Sony cameras for so long that I've kind of gotten bored with the whole system, even though it's incredibly reliable, and I will most likely never leave the Sony system behind, as it served me so well throughout the years for both my photo and video work. This camera just suffers from the same thing that basically every Sony camera does, which it can feel like you're just using a computer instead of a camera. It's so fast and accurate at basically everything it does that I've gotten to the point where I only pick up and use this camera for work, which I guess is not inherently a bad thing, but it does mean that I don't find myself all that inspired when I do use it. But that's not what this camera is supposed to be, for me at least, as I bought it when I had a need for a tool and not just a fun new toy. And that's why I have my Fujifilm and Nikon cameras, which are way more fun and inspiring. But all of that is just me. I mean, anybody can find any kind of inspiration from any kind of camera, and if you can find that from the A7IV, more power to you. I love that for you. I wish I felt that way, because then I wouldn't own all this equipment that really I don't have to own. But that's really it for the negatives of this camera. I found myself really trying to dig pretty hard to find more negatives, but it really is just that good of a camera. I can recommend this to like 95% of the people I know who do photo or video work. So what do you think? Do you already have the A7IV and you're watching this video to confirm that purchasing this camera was a good decision? Are you wanting to move up from a DSLR or an older Sony camera and you're thinking about adding this one to your kit? In the near future, I plan on making a video comparing the Sony A7IV to my Nikon ZF to my Fujifilm X-T5, as I think all three of those cameras are in a pretty similar class when it comes to capabilities and price to performance and all of that. So if you made it this far in the video and you'd like to see something about that, and you maybe have questions or suggestions specifically about that 3v3 comparison, then drop those in the comments. That's not 3v3 technically, right? That's just 1v1v1. That's the better way to put it. If you have more questions about this 1v1v1 comparison between all three of those cameras, please drop those in the comments. But that's it for this week's video. If you made it this far, really appreciate it. Further ways to support me would be to, watch more of my videos. You can subscribe, leave a like, and a comment if you have any thoughts to add to the conversation. You can also, again, pick up any of my presets if you'd like to do that. Just get the free one if you want to. I don't care, man. Who gets a rat's ass? But if you don't want to do any of that, that's totally fine, because I will see you in the algorithm in 6 months. Killed it.